It's Thursday, October 4th, 2012. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight, in the GeekNights Book Club, The Man Who Was Thursday by G.K. Chesterton.
Let's do this. Do you remember Mr. Bubble?
Mr. Bubble?
Yeah.
I remember Mr. Bubble.
Mr. Bubble's the shit. That's all I'm saying.
So you want to have a bubble bath, is what you're saying.
Oh, yeah.
I have not had a bubble bath since my age was single digits.
Check it out. They still make this shit.
Of course they do.
But the thing is, I think now it's all non-toxic, ultra safe. I don't know what it was in our day if it was a different formulation.
It's just soap.
No, it's not. It doesn't clean you.
It doesn't have to clean you to be soap. There's no definition of soap that says cleans you.
But they actually do make Mr. Bubble shampoo and body wash, brand stuff. But
now here's a much more important thing.
You only want the bubble bath.
I, as a kid, never understood the appeal of bubble baths.
When I was extremely small, it was like, oh, fuck yeah, bubbles. Ooh.
See, I didn't care about the bubbles because I had this little thing that hung over the tub on the side, and it was like this play school, boathouse.
I had boats.
No, it was a boathouse that hung over the side of the tub and had a little landing for the boats to go into, and little people could, live in it.
All right.
So basically, I'd hang out with that. If it was bubble bath, then that ruins my fun. Because now it's not like Happy Boat Town, it's Horrible Foam Town.
My trains and boats, they were the kind that stuck to the wall of the tub.
Oh, mine floated.
Oh, so I could play on the wall of the tub. And then I also had, a floaty boat and some other things.
I also had the Lego cargo ship.
I had this book that you could read in the tub.
I had one of those.
And it was about this penguin, and you would take the penguin out of the book and insert him into the waterproof pages.
The two things related to Lego in my life, three things that I wanted that actually were those kind of unattainable dreams of childhood were, one, the monorail, of course.
No one has it.
I knew a kid who had it.
Kid's spoiled.
He wouldn't let me play with it.
He's rich, he's spoiled, and he probably went nowhere in life. He's
Two,
probably a hipster.
I wanted the space shuttle, and you know what? I got that one. And three, I wanted the motor that went on the back of the cargo ship boat.
Yeah, we had the boat. We did not have the motor.
I never saw that motor in person. I
didn't even see the motor in the Lego catalog.
I only knew it existed because the instruction book had instructions for connecting it to the boat.
I would look in the Lego.
Dad.
I looked in that Lego catalog for that boat, and I didn't fucking see it. But I mostly bought Castle Lego. That's what I wanted.
I was mostly the space Lego.
Castle. My brother got space Lego. I was all about Castle.
In fact,
Lego.
when Ice Planet came out, you know what we used to do?
I had one Ice Planet. He had the orange chainsaw.
I had the base.
But yeah, no, the best is friggin' Castle. I mean, how could you not want Kniggets and Robin Hoods? And the Robin Hood Forest Men were even better than the Castle ones. They'd be like, with their bow and arrows.
Yeah, the bow and arrows okay. That whip that every kid used to make a makeshift gallows.
Yeah. I had so many whips and those little leafy green things and drawbridges and trees.
I didn't have any of the bridges, and I only had one castle, and it wasn't Lego. It was like this knockoff Lego.
Yeah, the only thing I couldn't get, though, is I wanted the big fucking castle. I didn't get that, the $100 castle. Which
But anyway,
nowadays is the $300 castle.
Not a normal show. Book club show. You might have forgotten about the book club. It's been a while. It's also a pretty short book. I have a feeling many of you didn't read it. You should have.
So I have a funny story also.
If this story begins with, so I didn't read the book.
No, I read the fucking book. So on Reddit, some girl, and this is in New York City Reddit, right? Some girl posted she has...
Oh, wait, so you're doing a thing of the day.
No.
Oh, okay.
Let's tell this story. She posted this story. She's an Asian foreign student. She's engaged to a lovely boyfriend who is white. Her loving and protective Korean mother does not know any of this, and she has been lying to her for over a year. And she basically made up this elaborate ruse.
Wait a minute. So far, this is the plot of Summer Wars.
Right. So she lives in New York. She's engaged to this, white dude.
Does she need a stand-in Asian dude to be a fake boyfriend?
Yeah, she has been telling this elaborate ruse for a long time. It's like, and she basically needs an apartment and people to keep this lie alive when people come to.
So it'd be great.
Her family shows up.
If we I just want to say, if we got someone to respond to this and be all legit and set it all up, and when the family arrives, don't reveal the truth. Just make everything really weird.
But she was offering $100 or more for help, and various people replied on Reddit. But then the
Her mom found it?
No, and then the Gothamist posted a story about her post, so it is spreading her ridiculous lie.
This might be right up there with Captain Butt Chugger.
It's like, why would you even? It's like, these are the kind of people.
So Scott, remember what ruined the plot of 99% of books and movies anyone could ever write from this point forward in time? The existence of the cell phone and the internet. These sorts of plots are perfectly viable in a world where there is no way for mom to find out that Reddit exists.
I doubt mom will find out, but this is still, why don't you just come clean? What the fuck? That's so much easier than maintaining this incredibly elaborate ruse.
Yes, Scott, it is so much easier if you are, in fact, someone like you or me. But for an average person, you would rather die than let that secret be revealed, than deal with your mom dealing with that. I'm not that way.
Yeah, then
that's how most people are.
I don't want to have nothing to do with you.
Now, see, here's what we do.
If you're a crazy person who will create drama, stay away from me.
We respond, get one of our Asian friends and do the whole thing super legit. And then when the mom shows up, the Asian friend is there, but he acts like he's not the actual boyfriend. And we have I don't know,
we just tell the truth for them because they can't do it themselves?
So we get a black Russian dude to then act like he's the boyfriend and just make everything double weird. So now the girl has two options. Come clean herself or deal with this doubly ridiculous double trick. That is what I would do if I were an enterprising young asshole.
Okay.
Luckily for this person,
I want to have nothing to do with dramatic people.
I will have one
really
thing to do with dramatic people. I will stand
I
from afar.
will laugh at them from afar across the internet. That is what I'm doing right now.
A younger Rim would engage in an elaborate hoax, but I'm old enough now to merely plan the hoax and plant the seed.
Maybe her mom listened to Geek Nights.
We should try to track down the mom and interview her.
Well, I'm sure there will be at least one more post about this on the internet.
Of course. FARC has one of the, this is very important. Very few websites on the internet do this, and FARC does it, and I feel like it's worth noting because it's related to this. FARC has many tags like asinine or boobies or whatever the story is. Florida, if it happens in Florida. There's one tag, follow up. Follow up is the best tag on FARC. That is when you find out what happened to crazy dude who got arrested for chugging wine up his butt.
But aren't half of those things going to be lame? Like, oh, guy just went to jail.
No, they only follow up if it's interesting.
Oh, okay.
Or if people cared how it turned out. But anyway, I digress. I think it's time for Things of the Day. So I'm going to cue up that little music there and... Mr. Bubble or Mr. Bucket.
Mr. Bucket sucks. Fuck Mr. Bucket up the ass. You should have Mr. Bubble versus Mr. Bucket. You know what? Mr. Bubble will just walk in and be like, boom! Mr. Bucket's now... Mr. Bucket will be full of bubbles, and then he'll choke to death on the bubbles, and balls will come out of his mouth.
I wonder if people have seen that, actually.
His balls will come right out of his mouth, and that's the end.
I'm going to do two things of the day. I'm going to cheat here. So, if you haven't seen it, our good... pseudo-internet friend, and that I talk to him occasionally via email, but we've never talked in person ever. The Angry Video Game Nerd,
he does know who we are,
did a video that is a dramatic sort of ghost story.
It's a review
centered around Mr. Bucket, and it is actually one of the greatest pieces of cinema posted to the internet.
I'm pretty sure you've mentioned this in the show before.
But in case we haven't, I make it my thing of the day. But my real thing
I've also
of the day,
told the story of how I got Mr. Bucket.
Yes, you have. I remember that now.
Oh, speaking of Angry Video Game Nerd, you know what month it is.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I've already missed, 4 of them?
No, he's doing them every other day.
It's come on, 31.
It's all 80s
Now I'm getting,
themed.
15?
They're all 80s themed all month.
Wait, so that means...
Monster Madness.
That means, are we going to get Halloween 3?
No, do you remember that movie we watched with Amber about the ghost, the monster that came out of the TV with the satellite dish in the backyard?
Yeah.
I don't know what it's called, but that one was in the trailer, so he's going to do it some point during the month.
Oh my God, that movie is right up there with The Stuff.
Anyway.
That was an era. We'd watch bad. In fact, you were not there.
Do your real thing of the day.
Of all the bad movies that Amber showed us, the worst is the one you were not there to see.
Do your thing of the day. That's the real thing of the day.
It is called, I'm just going to put this out here. This movie is called Boxing Helena. Good God. So anyway, My real thing of the
Isn't
day.
it Helena?
Watch the movie. Carbonated apple slices. This dude made a bunch of videos. Basically, he's kind of like those
How does that
periodic
even work?
table of videos guys who make like the awesome chemistry videos. This guy has a whole bunch of carbon dioxide in various forms and a pressure vessel and just does stuff with carbon dioxide.
Oh, so I guess if you put an apple into a chamber that was sealed and the chamber was full of carbon dioxide and the pressure was high, the carbon dioxide would be forced into the apple where it would go into the apple juice and then it would that is in the apple and fizz it up. So now you have a sparkling apple.
So basically, this guy did a bunch of stuff. Like, for example, he makes supercritical CO2 and just shows you how fucking awesome that is. It's used in dry cleaning and stuff. And anyway, this video, yes, he just carbonates some apple slices and then he eats them. And you know what? Apparently, they are goddamn delicious.
Yeah, they'd probably just hurt.
Yeah, I forget. You can't deal with carbonation.
It's
You're one of those
It is not
people.
a good thing.
I can't imagine. See,
It's also not good for you.
I cite that. Cite a source on that.
I've read stuff.
Yeah,
I Google
like that
it.
thing you read about how cold water hydrates you faster.
No.
That is what you said. I have chat logs, Captain Fuckwit.
No.
If I need to pull this out.
Yeah, you were the one who was so insistent for many years. You didn't even have anything, but you were insistent that warm water hydrated you faster, but you didn't even have one link.
I
had
said that.
one link.
What I said
You
was that
did
warm
say that.
water-
It is exactly what you said.
I said that I think
No,
warm water hydrates you better,
are
but I don't
editing
know.
history. That is a rebase. If I check the Git ref log, we can see what really happened.
Okay, anyway, what you think of the day, Captain?
Avoiding. Okay. So, this is another New York City person, right? This girl does a website called tendernuggets.com, and she basically writes blog posts and illustrates them with really cute, awesome illustrations. So she went on this odyssey across New York trying to get home late at night on the subway, and if you're a New Yorker, you will 100 times appreciate this entire story with all the pictures that go with
Now,
it.
what's
'Cause
sad-
it is super, super true.
The weird thing, though, is if I had never lived in New York City...
You wouldn't get it at all.
No, I would get it, because you can understand the Odyssey, but you would not grok it.
Yeah.
And in fact, what's interesting is people who don't live in New York or have never lived in New York read this and go, oh my God, what a shitty place to live. I read it, and while I can relate, all I can think is, I fucking love this city.
Yeah, it's like them feels. I have all of them.
I have bonded more with this girl who made this comic than I have with the majority of human beings I've ever met.
And we don't even know who this person is.
That picture
We just
of
have a lot-
her up against the window in the hobo car.
No,
is the
we just have
best
so many
picture.
shared experiences with this person that we do not know.
It's interesting how the
But
city
it's like,
has
the
so
smell
many,
is not of this earth.
the city has so many more people and so many more things, yet I feel like I have more shared experiences here than I did in like Beacon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, remember your I pushed you on this. I was like, give me a citation on your water bullshit, and you hemmed and hawed for 7 minutes, and then finally came back with one link on the Camelback
How many
website.
links did you have?
I didn't posit anything. You
Well, here
came
we
to
go.
me, and your link said cold water, psychologically speaking, and had no other evidence other than talking about placebos and psychosomatism.
Hold on. Let me search here.
And at no point in this chat do I make any claim. In fact, all I do is question your claims.
Hold on.
I have never typed in the history of the FRC,
Okay, so you are, in this case, lucky in that your claims were not made in a logged chat, but were instead made in a verbal and oral
Scott,
fashion,
for the
so
last-
they cannot be cited.
For the last 5 or 6 years, I have never ever typed the phrase warm water
Typed.
into any email
That is
or
correct.
chat.
You have not typed,
Of
but
any kind.
you have, over the course of many years since college, orally stated
Scott,
that
prove it.
the body,
Fine,
the human
prove
body,
it.
absorbs warm water faster than cold water.
Prove it.
I don't have to prove it. It's just known.
To you.
Uh-huh. From now on, I'm not chatting with you online anymore, ever. Because apparently, whatever's logged, is what counts. But even though you've said something 100 times and everybody knows it, that
here's a
doesn't
site
count.
that says room temperature water is best.
Metafilter?
Yeah.
That doesn't count.
Posted by Camel in Space on December 26th.
So are you now?
So Scott, this dude at 9:30 at night.
Are you saying
on the day
Metafilter
after-
is a better source than the Camelback website?
Which-
and you would presume that Camelback would hire water experts.
The Camelback website said only psychologically placebo effect.
It said that cold water is. It said which absorbs. It had a quiz,
Wait,
and it said
if you're
which
gonna be-
temperature is absorbed faster, and cold was the correct answer, and the other answers were not correct
Scott,
answers.
So here's why you're bad.
My
at
link
politics.
is as good
Here's
as your
the quote.
meta.
What you said. Seeing the Camelback thing again, it says, and then this is
There's a link.
This is a copy paste from the link. At which water temperature does your body hydrate most effectively? Now, here's the
Efficiently. You didn't even read it properly.
Yes. Here is the exact and full text of the response. Cold, yes, psychologically speaking. People perceive this to be true, making it true.
Making it true. Therefore, it is true.
Amazing how our mind works, isn't it?
Yep. So it because you perceive it
it-
as true, it becomes true. It is true.
So, Scott, if I
they are
perceive-
saying in that sentence
Scott,
that
I
it is
perceive
true.
that alcohol is good for me. Therefore, it is true.
Camelback says so. With water absorption.
Yep, so I've got my beer absorption experiment going on here.
Camelback, I trust more than Metafilter guy.
I trust Sapporo
And when
more
we
than I
actually
trust-
looked up scientific studies, I found out the truth. The truth is that it doesn't matter, and you have still always said orally that you have insisted that warm water is better with no sources for years and years
Now,
and years.
while I disagree with that, I have said I'm pretty sure or I think.
No, you have
because
not.
I don't know. See, Scott,
You are
forget.
editing history because you have the luxury of it not being logged, which
So,
is
Scott,
what you do often.
The odds are, so I'm just saying that how come in like 6 years I've never typed that?
You know,
You think that I put that much effort into this ridiculous ruse, this facade?
no, you didn't put effort into it. You just said a thing, and then when you found out you were wrong, and you just got lucky that there was no evidence of it, so you just denied it and rewrote history.
So, Scott, even were that true?
You know, ever since I was 1, I've always known calculus. Prove that I
Scott,
didn't.
I know you didn't, and the reason I can prove that is you failed calculus 3 twice.
I knew calculus 1 since I was 0. Prove I didn't. Otherwise, it's true. No. It's prove. Right? You see how this goes? All right.
I'm just pointing out that
You have no proof
I have a counter evidence and evidence
that
of
I am
character.
not a genius of secretness.
Here's my evidence of character. You know me.
Evidence of character.
Yes.
Rim is the biggest lying. Does this all the time, 100 times. Everybody knows.
So what you have found in many of the times where you've accused me of lying is that upon review or upon discussion with other
that
people,
you edited history.
it's not that I ever lie. It's that I speak with an extreme precision, and when I am vague on points, I am vague to a very precise
this
degree
point-
to leave ambiguity
On
such
this
that
point,
I
you were
literally-
not vague. You are merely saying what you said now. You are post hoc editing what you have said.
No,
if I
because,
could have
Scott,
a time machine, you know that the only way to prove otherwise without any doubt is to go with a time machine, which is not possible. Therefore, you are taking full advantage of that fact, as you often do,
So I implore.
to make an argument that, it is...
I implore all of our listeners. I will just point out
Prove
this.
that you did not say what I say you said. You
Listeners-
can't, because you don't have a time machine
Listeners,
either.
I implore you. You know me.
You
If
do
you
know
hear-
him.
You have heard me
That's
speak
why you know that
many
I am
times.
right, and I'm the person who does not lie ever, and Rim is the person who lies often.
Do I
this
not?
is well known.
Do I not, by instinct, by second nature, qualify my statements such that no one can ever actually find specific fault with them? Is it not a common thing for me to say things such as, well, I believe, I think, I posit, I've
In
heard,
this case, you did not do that.
but yet I've done that for almost every assertion I've ever made in my life except this one.
Have you? Do we have a time machine to prove that as well?
So listeners, think back upon previous Geek Nights episodes. Go find arguments we've had.
and go see who is the person who is always truth-telling and who is the person who is always lying. Especially in the board game department, Mr. Character.
I
Readily admitting to lying in the board game department.
Is it in fact,
and behaving that way and using the same strategies in everyday parlance.
Is it in fact not the opposite? For is it not my shtick, if you will, if I may, in both Small World and Mafia, to never lie ever?
It is not your shtick. No, it is
Have
not.
I ever lied in a game of Mafia?
You have.
When?
Do we also need the time machine for this one? You know what? I've always lied in every game of Mafia. When?
You didn't play at PAX, so that was the last time we played.
Right? When was it, right? Okay. Anyway.
So I'm glad we're clear.
Do we have any meta moments available?
That I'm right. The GeekNights Book Club, the next book will be announced. It's Scott's pick.
It'll be announced right now.
Okay.
So I got to tell the story of this book club. It'll take a minute. So
Uh-oh.
I was reading the Penny Arcade print editions, which I highly recommend because they contain additional commentaries.
That they do.
And many other goodies.
It's good commentary.
You should buy them for cheap on Amazon. And the introduction to one of the later volumes was written by a man named Patrick Rothfuss. And I was like, who the hell is this guy? And he basically talked all about how he was writing some fantasy novel. And I'm like, oh, whatever. Some guy wrote a fantasy novels writing the foreword for some Penny Arcade volume. All right. And then I look into this guy, and apparently he's the hot new fantasy guy on the block, relatively speaking. That means, a year or two, right? As opposed to 10, 20 years. And a lot of people were reading his book all over the place. So I bought it, but I didn't read it yet. It's just been sitting there on the shelf. And my new policy for book club is pick the book that's on the shelf that I haven't read yet so I don't have to buy new books. Therefore, and also I heard some people commentate on this book saying that it ends in sort of an place, but the sequel I believe is now available. So we're only going to do this first book, but if you feel you're hanging at the end of it, you are no longer stuck waiting for a book to be published. You can go buy another one or download another one. So the book is, I forget the exact title. It's the name. I think is it The Name of the Wind or In the Name of the Wind? It is
Children Who Chase Lost Wind Through Voices Deep Below.
Yeah, something along those lines. It is The Name of the Wind, King Killer Chronicles Day 1 by Patrick Rothfuss. And it is $11.56 in paper version. And the sequel is The Wise Man's Fear, which is King Killer Chronicles Day 2. I suppose it's about a guy who kills the king?
I know, King
and
Killer
in fact,
Chronicles,
the paperback of the second volume is cheaper than the paperback of the first volume.
The 1-2 tree syllabalism of that, I find it ridiculously hilarious. King Killer Chronicles?
Yeah. So, The Name of the Wind, a book that I do not know if is good or bad, but I have it, so I don't want to have my money wasted. So that's going to be the book club.
All right, the next one after that will probably be The Great Gatsby because I want to read it before the movie happens.
Yeah, I'm definitely in favor of the class. That's what I'm going to do when I run out of books on my bookshelf that are physical. And
I almost want to make it
because I'm probably not going to buy too many more of those, or I'm going to move over to the classics I haven't read.
See, the trouble is, every time I would rather do a work of nonfiction, but I know that none of you assholes will read it.
That's right.
But I almost, for the sake of the fact that it's so important to gaming, I feel like I should almost make the book club book that Richard Garfield book.
Anyway, but yeah, I figured, this time I also want to concentrate more on the fact that, it is the book club, but it's the GeekNights Book Club. We should lean at least slightly more towards the fantasy sci-fi
now what?
stereotypical
It's the GeekNights
nerd
Book Club, as in, we are geeks, not nerds. I am just as geeky about rock climbing and mountain biking as I am about video gaming.
I'm just saying, I'm going to, at least the shelf of unread.
Besides, you want to go geeky? All right, fine. That Byzantine bullshit I've been reading is going to be the next book club book. That's 800 pages of the driest history you are ever going to read.
If it's your pick, you can pick whatever you want. Why don't you pick that Peter the Great book that no one will be able to get a copy of?
I've read almost that entire book. You know what? The wars between Sweden and Russia, hilarious. Anyway. Not really. They're hilarious from the perspective of if you treat those wars like advance wars.
So we have to remember to actually update all that book club section on the website.
Yeah. So, The Man Who Was Thursday.
So this was your selection?
Yep, I chose it.
Explain why it was chosen and what you heard about it and such.
I had chosen, literally, I was going to choose between The Great Gatsby, because the movie's coming that looks actually really good, and I've never read The Great Gatsby, and The Man Who Was Thursday. And I don't recall, I might have said when I announced it, why I noticed The Man Who Was Thursday, but it was called to my attention by something. And upon it being called to my attention, I remembered in Deus Ex something that sounded similar. And sure enough, this book is quoted in Deus Ex.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little bit of nerdly tie. And one of our listeners said something to the effect of, my dad says this is a great book and he's always tried to get me to read it. And the dad, as I've met him, is pretty nerdy. So all these things together, I decided, you know what? Maybe I'll check this book out and make it the book club book. And when I looked at what it was about, obviously spoilers from this point forward if you guys haven't read the book. But at the same time,
It's fucking book club. I mean, what the fuck, guys?
if you didn't read this book, it'd probably be okay to listen to this episode because it'll spoil everything. But you know what?
Doesn't
This
matter.
is not a book to be spoiled because the premise is the only big spoiler. And I read the premise. The premise was, as you know, that you've got a bunch of anarchists out there trying to ruin the world, and you've got a cop.
Well, if you believe that anarchy is ruining the world.
Yeah,
You
so
might like an anarchist world.
Yeah, and the book gets into that. So you've got a cop, and the cop infiltrates the anarchists and gets elected to the anarchist council because he's a better proponent of anarchism than the real anarchists.
How could anarchists have a council? Isn't the mere existence of a council contrary to anarchy?
So I realized 15
And in fact, they bring that
pages
up in the book as
into
well.
this book that it is in fact a comedy.
Yeah, no kidding.
And that I actually really enjoyed it from that perspective. But
There were funny parts, but yeah,
no, the funniest part in the entire book is Dr. Bull is my favorite character
it's pretty good.
because he is the one, whenever everything goes to shit, he is always the one who is like, fuck it. It's over. I don't give a shit. You guys suck. It's done. Or he'll laugh or do something funny. And there's one scene that really stuck out in my mind. Remember when they think that the anarchists are chasing them down to murder them because the entire world is broken out
And
in
there's like
anarchist
two
revolt?
or three chapters of chase scene.
Oh my God, that's the longest chase ever.
Right.
Well, no, I think the chase after that with the hot air balloon is probably the best one.
It's basically the same chase as far as I'm concerned, with a slight intermission
So
or an intermezzo.
the fake anarchists are chasing them and they're trying to get away, and then they finally are gonna fight and whatever, and they run up and he hits the guy with that lantern and he pulls out the sword and all the bullshit, and Dr. Bull's standing there with the sword, and then the guy's like, I'm a cop. And as soon as he says that, Dr. Bull, there's a pause, like there's a break, and the next paragraph is one sentence, and all it says is Dr. Bull threw his sword into the sea. And I just picture him being like, oh fuck, and just throwing it, just like fuck everything. And that I actually laughed out loud at that scene because Dr. Bull reacts to everything like that. Just I picture him thinking in his head, for the love of God.
Yeah. Do you remember which day of the week he was?
I do not.
I don't either. I hardly remember. I also don't really remember much of the days of the week, guys, other than
Dr. Bull.
Well, this Dr. Bull is the first guy.
I remember more about the Colonel, the French guy, Delacroix or whatever.
Oh, right, and that's the that's
him.
the guy he duels with, right? The French guy, because he has to go. Doesn't he go to France for the duel?
But he also has his two French friends who are helping him.
Yeah.
And all that business.
Anyway.
So, yeah, they're all cops. Everyone's a cop. Everyone in this whole thing's a cop, except Sunday, who I think is God. So what'd you think of this book?
I mean, on the one hand, right, the premise was actually, considering how long ago this was written, and considering that, I was surprised. I'm like, I can't think of anything recent that sort of stole this really clever premise.
Yeah, I mean, this book is written in 1908.
Right, you would think, something like this would have been stolen and redone 100 times. So the fact that it wasn't sort of made that, that idea that, this guy's undercover, but actually everyone else is also undercover and on his side, but no one knows it. It's like, that's so clever. How come nobody's reused that or stolen it? And it's like, man, that... just that fact alone sort of is what really makes the book kind of cool. But there was also, I kind of liked, a lot of the, symbolic things that were going on in the book, especially the sort of trippy stuff, like towards the end, where they've all got the costumes on of the different days of the week.
So two interesting points. One,
because I like trippy shit like that.
I did this sort of like middle school level literary analysis through. I didn't really engage too deeply because I didn't care that much.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously this is a book, if like I could picture any like eighth grader being assigned this book and having to write papers on the symbolism within it.
Yep.
But I literally completely did not in any way pick up on the 7 days of creation Christian symbolism until the very end when they were like, when one of the characters like, he's like, this costume, how does this match Thursday? This is stupid. And the guy's like, Thursday is when X and Y were created in the 7 days. The main character's like, Bible.
I also did not pick up on that. I was thinking more during the whole book up until that point. I was thinking along the lines of, well, it's Thor's Day, right?
What?
And the origins of the name, since it didn't fit. Right, I was like, well, where the names of the days come from is the kind of thing I was trying to match up.
Do you know where all the days come from?
I looked up some of them that I didn't know.
Do you know what Tuesday is? I won a fucking quiz bowl competition with that shit.
All right, well, what is it, Quiz Bowl man?
Okay, so Thursday is
forget
Thursday.
Already. It's been a while.
Tuesday is Tyr's Day. Tyr is a different Norse god.
Oh, okay.
So, you know how I won this quiz bowl? This was a
Tyr. You kind of mumbled it. So
no, it wasn't the name 3 elements that begin with H thing.
Okay.
Helium, hydrogen, and helium. So basically, it was like Norse mythology. The topic was something like days and months, and it was like. It was me alone against this other guy, like a one-on-one. Like one guy from each team went up and did like these 20 questions.
Like Family Feud?
Yeah. So it was all like they would name a month or a day or something, and you have to buzz in and say what the etymological origin of that was. And it was like Thursday. I was like Thor, and I was like yes, and I'm going through just fine. This is Tuesday, and I didn't know. The other guy didn't know shit. So I'm just sitting there, and I'm like and I just figured I'd buzz in because it didn't matter. So I buzzed in, and I said Tyr. Because Tyr is Norse god. Also, you know why I knew Tyr?
Begins with T?
No.
Tyr D&D?
is in Forgotten Realms.
I was going to say D&D.
He is one of the Norse gods who fled when that pantheon fell apart to live in Forgotten Realms.
That's Tyre, Tyr.
No, just Tyr.
Oh, okay.
So I just said that, and it was right.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, how'd you know that? And I was like, because I'm a genius, of course.
Nerd, anyway.
I know everything about Norse mythology.
Right, and anyway, the Norse gods did not match up in any meaningful way with the different dudes and their personalities or anything, so I was just like,
But what's interesting is what this does. It really illustrates that the place and time that a work is written can often be very fixed, not just in terms of understanding the story, but in terms of one's interpretation. Anyone in 1908 reading this would
have been very Bible-y.
Would have just, even if they weren't religious, they at least knew the Bible and would think about the Bible.
If you're a literate book-reading person at that time.
So
right?
Works from that era, you would just assume that 7 days, all right, there's probably a Bible metaphor going on. But note how, in the book, none of the characters picked up on that, and they were surprised when it was pointed out to them, but it is referenced several times throughout the book that none of them know what's in the Bible. None of them are religious.
Yep.
Even though Syme beats the guy over the head with that religious lantern and talks about how important that cross is.
Yeah.
But he's never actually read the Bible.
So, you read the free edition from the Internet's Project Gutenberg?
Yep, it was okay.
All right, did that have an introduction that was written by... Who is the introduction written by?
No introduction.
Okay. Did that have footnotes in the back?
Nothing. Nope.
No. See,
Nope.
I purchased the Penguin Classics edition for a handful of reasons. Reason number 1, smells so good. Reason number 2, the cover is amazing. It has all these police just all over the place beating up on people in this pretty good art style. And reason number 3, which I didn't know until I got it, is it has this awesome appendix and footnotes and things like that, which were incredibly helpful because there's things that you wouldn't know. There's no chance even a super educated, well-read person, unless you were kind of like a literary person, with this kind of expertise, you would not know any of this shit that was, only relevant at the time. And it tells you like what certain words mean and things like that. And it was super helpful while reading the book, but some of the things that they were trying to explain were just kind of weird. It's like Strasbourg pie. It's a pate made with fatty goose livers. For example, it was reported the young man in the diplomatic service at Pumpernickel, Pitt Crawley, used to bring home dispatches consisting of Strasbourg pie to the foreign minister of the day. And it's like, what? What the fuck does that have to do with... I'm sure they mentioned like Strasbourg pie in some sentence somewhere, and it's like, well, why is Strasbourg pie, relevant at all. But the one thing that was relevant was the thing about the Aesop's fable about the pig. And here it is.
That was a good part because that tactic of debate was brought. I took an argumentation class at RIT. It was literally argumentation and debate, and we talked about that technique at length.
Mm-hmm. So let me find this. I just want to find the relevant passage in the actual book that it was referencing. Page 65, footnote number 8. I should have done this before the show started,
Captain.
But I didn't think of it until just now.
Captain, come on. All right, so my other favorite Dr. Bull moment is toward the very end when the one guy keeps being like, they're all like talking about Sunday, like, he's like a god, like the world, he's like Pan. And that one guy keeps being like, just like Pan. And finally, Dr. Bull is like, you seem to think Pan is everything. Shut it.
All right, so here it comes. Okay, so he's like, what's going on? I don't have the context, but basically the guy says, I see, he sneered. You prevail like the false pig in Aesop, and you fail, I answered, smiling like the hedgehog in Montaigne. Need I say there is no hedgehog in Montaigne? Your claptrap comes off, he said, so would your beard. I had no intelligent answer to this, which was quite true and rather witty, but I laughed heartily, answered like the Panthea's boots. So in the footnotes it says, the false pig in Aesop. Probably a nonsense formulation, though in his edition, Stephen Metcalf, I guess he made an edition of Aesop's Fables, identifies the phrase with the fable of the buffoon and the countryman, actually by Phaedrus, but ascribed by him to Aesop. A buffoon at a theater imitated a pig's squeak so perfectly that the audience insisted he must have a pig hidden about his person, but applauded him definitely when he convinced them he had not. A countryman claimed he could do better and made a pig which he had beneath his smock squeak. The audience unanimously declared that the buffoon's imitation was much more true to life. The countryman producing the pig says, that shows what sort of judges you are. In 1912, Chesterton provided the introduction to V.S. Vernon Jones' translation of Aesop's Fables, illustrated by Arthur Rackham. There he insists that in contrast to fairy tales, fables like those for which Aesop was famous are premised on the idea that everything is itself and will in any case speak for itself. The wolf will always be wolfish, the fox will always be foxy. According to this theory, the idea of a false pig is completely incompatible with Aesop, right? So in Aesop's Fables, a fox would always be foxy. But in this fable, right, things were not as they seem. Therefore, it was not an Aesop's Fable. I just thought, that's the kind of crazy and interesting stuff that was going on here. And I don't remember the context of that weird passage. Well,
that was when he's trying to, the guy who's dressed up like the scholar is trying to convince the people around the scholar who follow him that the actual scholar is in fact the imposter.
That's right. Oh, that was actually one of my favorite parts.
Yeah, because the scholar's quoting, like, he's making real witticisms.
The guy,
one of the guy's just like, well, la-di-da.
Exactly. One of the cops is impersonates this anarchist scholar, and he impersonates him so well that then what happens is the actual scholar gets sort of cast out because they think he's the imposter. So he is like the pig in this fable by Phaedrus, right? To where he's the real scholar, but everyone believes the imposter is the real deal because he's better than that, right? So, and the fact that Chesterton wrote an introduction to a collection of Aesop's Fables, I think he knew also that it was the false pig of Phaedrus and not of Aesop, and wrote that on purpose, and shows you what's going on there.
That's some Hamlet level, I'm crazy. Check it out.
Yeah. Anyway.
This book, if nothing, when I read it, I think the reason a lot of people think back to it is, one, the premise is great, even though the book itself not that entertaining really, except as a comedy. But it is eminently quotable.
Super.
Like, if you want something somewhat witty and a little bit lengthy with some references to quote that is relevant to a lot of modern society, the characters are just rife with them. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why it's quoted in a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. I see you have a page of quotes there. Do you want to rattle them off of hilarity?
Well, this isn't real. This is just something a character said. He said, "Your offer is far too idiotic to be declined." I actually really like that one.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that you can use in everyday speaking if you could be that witty, you know? But yeah, my biggest problem with this book is that just the pacing was so crazy. And
The action scenes are unparsable.
yeah, everything was moving so rapidly and yet sometimes so slowly. It's like they would pretty much like teleport almost. It's like, okay, they're talking in London and they're in France having a duel on like the next page, and it's like they didn't really just, it's like they didn't sort of ease into a train trip or anything like that, or the boat. It's just like bam, and suddenly they're dueling in France, and you didn't even realize they're in France unless you're reading really, really carefully. And then especially those two chase scenes toward the end, it's pretty much like, whoosh, they're in a car. Whoosh, they're somewhere. Whoosh, there's a million people chasing them. Where did they come from so quickly? And
like when the anarchists are chasing them, it's like there's an army now. And again, those guys are stupid too. They're like, hey, there's a bunch of guys over there. I guess the entire world has risen up in anarchy.
Yeah, it's like, what?
Let's go to the police station. They'll help us.
And it's like by the time they're at the police station, the town's being overrun, and it's like 2 paragraphs ago, you were just chilling at some dude's house, asking him for his car.
And the weird things that happen, like when the one guy produces a lantern in the car, and they're like, "Where'd you get that lantern?" And he's like, "Oh, the guy just ripped it out of the ceiling for me. Smashed 2 of his vases on the way." And they're like, "What?"
It's like, why didn't you show that when it happened instead of... It feels like someone was writing this with ink and didn't have word processor.
The chase scenes were also
so he didn't want to go back and write in the smashing scene, so he put it in later.
They were a little cartoony, like the chase scene in Kung Fu Hustle.
I think even crazier and harder to follow.
Well, especially there's a scene where the guy that early on that's chasing him, the old man, but always appears right behind him, very Pinkie Pie style.
Yep.
But there's also the scene when they're chasing Sunday, and he's like throwing notes at them and just dicking around with it.
It's like, that's the kind of stuff that you see in like a Babar cartoon or Babar, right? That just shit makes no sense.
But here's what I really want to say about this book. I think it was enjoyable to read, but not super enjoyable. But I'm glad I read it. More importantly, this is a story that really, really needs a loose interpretation, like a movie or a comic that is not very, kind of like how RoboCop the movie was not very true to the original idea, and yet it was
there was
better
something
because
before RoboCop the movie.
Well, the original conception for RoboCop was very different from what RoboCop became.
But it wasn't a book.
Fine, Total Recall.
Okay.
The story, Total Recall, the story is one thing. The movie, the Arnold one, was actually way different. But it on its own was really good. This is that kind of story where if you just take the events and the core idea and interpret it loosely and do something cool with it, would make a fantastic and hilarious comedy.
Yeah, I think the number one thing you have to do, right, is the whole first few chapters where, other than the first one, where he discovers that every single other person is a cop, slowly but surely, one at a time. It's like, after the second or third one, when you go up to the fourth guy, you got to be like, all right, we know you're a cop, right? It's like you'd just assume everyone else is one at that point because it's too crazy that the first 3 you came across were all cops, and you would still assume the rest aren't.
The characters,
all of them but the last one are cops, and you still assume the last one isn't.
Well, this is my trouble. Syme was brilliant most of the time, but he was stupid in this one regard. He's like, oh, I guess there were 5 cops out of 7.
Right. It's like, no.
That?
After number 3 or 4, it's like, I'm assuming the rest are cops, right? Before I assume they're anarchists. Because even if it was 3 out of 7, what are the odds that you picked the first 3 out of 7?
Also,
right?
It's the game of Mafia.
Exactly. Kind of. You want to make a mafia game that is themed on Men Who Was Thursday?
It would be a mafia-like. It would not be a mafia game. It wouldn't be mafia.
You draw a card that says Sunday on it. You're like, fuck yeah.
I don't know how it would work.
Well, come up with it.
Well, I got to come up with my 25 shitty games first. The one I'm working on right now, it's bumway cars.
So,
it's placing bums on platforms and then into trains, and then you have your guys trying to avoid the bums.
Right.
Yeah,
But anyway, if you did this, if you interpreted this into a movie or something like that, you would have to somehow make it believable that they really, really believe that everyone else was an anarchist.
You'd have to make it you'd have to really play it up as a sort of farcical comedy.
Yeah.
Which could still be done. I mean, like I said, I laughed out loud several times at Dr. Bull reacting to things.
Yeah, there's also the whole bomb plot at the beginning, which is like...
No, forget the bomb. The bomb plot was fine until they had the duel, and as readers, we knew the other guy was a cop. And yet I don't understand what his plan was. If he was a cop and didn't want to set off the bomb, why was he trying desperately to win the duel to go set off the bomb?
Yep. And meanwhile, while there's a whole bunch of the people coming out to chase them, why were they running away? It's like that's the point where like they got caught up with and the chases began right after the duel. So it's like you could have just let them catch.
Yeah. I gotta say though, I like Gregory because he is.
Well, I think he's definitely the most.
That scene in the beginning when he loses the debate, he is the angriest a Gregory has ever been. He is so angry.
I think that was actually probably that very beginning was like more well-paced and well-written than the rest of the book. I think it's like he had this huge idea, he had the perfect setup, and then the rest of it was much looser. But I
don't think he knew where to go with it either.
Yeah, but those opening 1 or 2 chapters with the setup were pretty great. If the whole rest of it had been as good as that setup, it would have been awesome.
So random aside, but every time Sunday was described, I could not help but picture the leader from 1Q84.
Oh, that's
because they were both described the same way.
Sort of similar. I imagine the leader from
and their movement, specifically when they describe the way the leader moves, is the same as the way.
But
this
I
guy
imagined
moves.
the thing is, I imagined them also very similarly, and I actually did think about the leader from QT84, right? But I imagined the leader in 1Q84 as being taller and thinner, whereas imagined Sunday because he was I'm being more square, like the Kingpin from Marvel Comics.
True,
like a big square guy.
But in QT84,
which was kind of crazy for the chase scene because he was running away, but he was immensely fat.
Oh, that happened all the time. Look at the action scenes. Made no sense. There is no way a thrown piece of paper from a speeding cab lands in the other cab.
Right. Well, maybe they were like horse cabs, but no, they specifically had gas-powered cars.
Well, later, they had both at different times.
Yeah.
But in 1Q84, the way the leader is described as moving, the way he shakes out his shoulders, there's an identical scene in this book where Sunday shakes out his shoulders and quivers like in this mass.
I actually, for a time, because every single, almost half those guys were like guys in disguise and costume and shit like that,
You thought
right?
he was in disguise too?
I was pretty sure Sunday was like Gregory in an inflato suit or something.
Yeah.
For a few pages there.
That would have been great. But I like the fact that Gregory was the only actual anarchist.
Yeah.
In the whole book.
No one was an anarchist.
So what was the book trying to say?
What was the book trying to say?
It made, much like other books we've read like this, it made many small points along the way, but doesn't have an overarching point.
Well, I think, the one point, I think there are many points to take away, but the biggest one I took away was the thing they say, of course, whatever you say near the end of the book, right, is most likely to be, something that is really very important. Or towards the beginning also. So the one thing that I really took away was this one part here where it says, I'm pretty sure this is it. Yes. All right. Syme sprang to his feet, shaking from head to foot. I see everything that there is. Why does each thing on earth war against each other thing? Why does each small thing in the world have to fight against the world itself? Why does a fly have to fight for the whole universe? Why does a dandelion have to fight the whole universe?
That could be a metaphor for the ridiculosity of the anarchist position.
Yes, but for the same reason that I had to be alone in the dreadful council of the days, alone on the council. See, a council's a group, but he was alone. So that each thing that obeys law may have the glory and isolation of the anarchist. Glory and isolation of the anarchist. So that each man fighting for order may be as brave and good as a man as the dynamiter.
There is something to be said.
So that the real lie of Satan may be flung back in the face of the blasphemer, so that by tears and torture we may earn the right to say to this man, you lie. No agonies can be too great to buy the right to say to this accuser, we also have suffered.
That was what I was about to say. That buys into this idea that the anarchist feels put upon and feels alone and has only one noble way to fight back.
Mm-hmm.
But if they'd actually talk to each other, and
Right. Well, I think a whole lot of this is more about, that's why I emphasized isolation, right? As you look at this book and it's about, the difference. It shows you, the hypocrisy of you're anarchists, but you have a council, or, he's a cop. He sneaks into this thing alone, right? He thinks he's the only one who's undercover amongst a sea of anarchists. He feels, as the anarchist feels, put upon by, the whole world. It's him against this whole council of anarchists. But then, because he's not an anarchist, he teams up, right? And that is the difference between the anarchist and the not-anarchist, is that, in a place with no rules, and there's no governance and no law, there can be no teaming up because you can't fully trust anyone with no sort of structure or anything. But, the good guys, the non-anarchists, right, they have the power to team. Right? It's not, it makes sense for them to have a council, to have a group, to join up. And as they, it's the whole half the book, more than half the book, is him going along, teaming up with these guys, getting the band together, right? And then all chasing together in this team to get, why must he fight
so
against,
the anarchist wants to isolate himself, and yet the very nature of his struggle drives him to team up.
Well, but at the same time, the anarchist fights alone, right?
No, so here's the thing. Look at all the other anarchists around Gregory. They formed this little council and everything, and they were doing the same thing, but legit. Mm-hmm. At least trying to. Gregory.
But when they went to do their bombing, it was one guy would actually do the bombing, whereas police, they went and, when it was time to do their thing, they all grouped up together in the chase. It wasn't like one guy carrying the weight of everybody.
At the fatal flaw of anarchism, whenever you see like punk kids today talking about it, which is very common, or libertarians or anything, they always sort of go down this road of, we don't need these authorities to tell us what to do. We can figure it out ourselves. We can band together ourselves to provide these services consensually,
which is
what
bowing to
government
the
is.
authority. Right. So it's this conflict between the cooperation and individualism.
The true anarchist, the Gregory, who actually would go and put the bomb, is the one person in that debate who, once the government's gone, would actually prevent new government from coming up.
Yep.
And would bomb any government, even an anarchist government.
But even Gregory, right? Even the Gregory who would bomb and would prevent government from forming and doesn't want to cooperate, still wants to have friends to walk in the woods with and have witty debates with.
No, but
right?
that is, yeah,
and
well, that's afterward. That's the answer.
He still has the honor of not, of sticking to the word that he said. He is putting law upon himself.
Now, there are two ways to interpret that.
Mm-hmm.
The police were all notably either a-religious or straight up atheists. None of them knew the Bible. It was really outside of what they talk about archangels and things, but it was made.
They were
yes.
in true to atheist form, they were very well educated in religion.
But it was made very clear that they did not know the Bible.
Yep.
Yet they had this code of honor anyway. Simon was not afraid of damnation keeping his word. He kept his word because he keeps his word.
Exactly.
Gregory you could argue, kept his word out of a fear or submission to this higher authority that he cannot strike at.
Mm-hmm.
Or
so that is, you're saying he could believe in anarchy being okay because he also believed in God, and so you don't need government because God keeps everything in line.
Or
because it was keeping him in line because he was religious.
Or he was also an atheist, but in his isolationism believed that he still, for whatever reason, had to keep up this honor. He had to be an honorable person. Yet in the very end, in that scene, in the very end of the book, I point out he basically calls them all cops, effectively breaking his word by revealing that to other cops.
Yep.
Simon never broke his word.
Nope. There's also the whole thing where at the end, you can't even tell how much of that is real and how much of that might be Simon tripping on who knows what.
Well, because
there's like really quick sentences that are like things went black and then he doesn't remember, and it's like.
Well, it kind of gets to the point that look at Gregory. If the end is to be believed, despite all of his feelings and being a true anarchist, can engage in intelligent conversation and debate, and in fact seems more fulfilled by that than by bombing. So perhaps the true answer is to have all different kinds of people debate all different kinds of things in an intellectual place rather than a physical place. Or it was just a thriller book with a bunch of allegory written 100 years ago.
Yeah, it's also definitely what it was.
I don't know. I'm glad I read it, but I could understand why other people wouldn't enjoy it. But if I was ever an English teacher, you
I
can
will-
bet your butt that if you were in 8th grade, you'd be reading this and writing me a 5-paragraph paper on the symbolism within.
I will say that
It was more
the
allegory.
book,
It
the
was
book
more
had
allegory.
many good parts. It had many flaws. And if it was any longer, the flaws might have outweighed, but it is the correct length for the contents that it is containing. It is a box, and all of the contents of the box are fitting inside of it perfectly with no empty space, and also it is not overflowing, so you can close the box very neatly.
All right. And I guess to wrap up the box metaphor, let's put a bow on it and stop because I'm kind of hungry. And
Yeah, let's go.
this has been Geek Nights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music, Kat Lee for web design, and Brando K for the logos.
Be sure to visit our website at frontrowcrew.com for show notes, discussion, news, and more.
Remember, Geek Nights is not 1, but 4 different shows. Sci-Tech Mondays, Gaming Tuesdays, Anime Comic Wednesdays, and Indiscriminate Thursdays.
Geek Nights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 license. Geek Nights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.